We are
we are
here
here.
for the Yummy Food Shots lecture. Now, basically, the idea is to make your food look sexy because food is one of the things that really cater to the basic human need, and one of which is hunger, right? Now, there are a lot of problems or issues why people don't take pictures of food. If you notice, there are more people taking pictures of portraits, weddings, events. But when it comes to specialized genre like food, product, there'll be less and less. Okay? The major misconception is that, food photography is difficult. Okay? Well, that's true. Food photography is difficult if you do not understand food itself. That's why it pays to have genuine appreciation of food. Just like the same way, if you've taken pictures of people for portraits, you are interested in that person. While you're taking that picture, you ask questions, you build rapport, correct? Of course, food cannot talk. So you have to understand food yourself. Now, one of the difficulties in taking food, obviously, is that it expires easily. For example, the simple French fries, okay? It won't look the same 10 minutes after. That's the reason why if you go to a McDonald's store, all the fries that are just fried are kept under a warming bin, warm lights. And then, after 10 minutes, it's discarded. I know, because I used to work for McDonald's when I was a teenager. But take note, make no mistake, we don't really throw the fries. There is a system that predicts how much fries should be put in the vat so that by the time before the 10 minutes is up, it's all sold. But that's not the case for food photography. You have to take the picture within 10 minutes. And that's where the difficulty lies. Okay? Why? Because if you tried food photography yourself, okay, what should I do? What should I do? How can I present this? It doesn't look nice. So basically, you're doing trial and error, you're trying, guessing things, the approach. My objective for today is to make you stop doing the trial and error while you're taking food, because food has a very short expiry. But the moment you know what food to take, you already know what to do. That's my objective. Number 2, you need expensive gear to take pictures of food. I'm not going to lie that it's better to have expensive gear. It's not because it will help you shoot better. It makes you more efficient as a photographer. But that doesn't mean that you cannot take effective photos of food with just cheap equipment. Of course, you can, as long as you understand certain things. And I'm going to disclose that today. So, just to be clear, my objective for today is to concentrate more on the food itself. As you can see in Instagram, social media, a lot of people are putting so much effort and time into the styling, the effect, the artistry. Now, I'm going to talk about from the point of view of a commercial photographer taking pictures for food for restaurants. Why? The objective here is to sell the food, not to sell your artistry. So the hero here is the food, not you as the photographer. As you can see, if you recall all the ads, even in social media, of fast food giants, all right, and known restaurants, it's rare to see pictures of food like in McDonald's, the patty, the lettuce, the tomato, the pickles, all flying out. You never see that. That's perfect for showing your artistry in your portfolio as a photographer. But from the point of view of the client, which is your client as a food photographer, or you as a food business, that will not sell. It will not entice people to buy that food when they see it disassembled flying in the air. It's a nice cover for a menu. It's a nice cover for a coffee table book. But when you go to a restaurant, especially if it's your first time there, and you're not familiar with the food, what's the first thing that you look at in the menu? The ones that has pictures, right? Because somehow it communicates faster, this is what you'll get, right? So, all the principles and techniques I'm going to tell you today only pertains to how you can make the food look sexy and yummy. Now, first and foremost, whenever I take pictures of food, I always make sure I have these three things present. One is my setup. Okay? Number two, how will I arrange or compose the shot? Number three, the lighting. Once I get all these three together, I can be assured that I will be able to take a great capture. Now, anyone here who've been shooting food before or currently? Okay, and if you notice, especially every time somebody asks you to take a photo of a food and you're there already in the restaurant, there's that nervousness, right? Like, what if they know that I'm not really good at this? What if, it's like the imposter syndrome, right? And that's my objective, to make sure you don't feel that today. I'm gonna make sure that you feel confident taking any food. And that's why I'm going to lay a groundwork on the things that you need to look for so that you will be confident I can take that. And later on, I'm gonna ask you to try shooting some food also. Okay? And if you stick until the end of this talk, I'm going to give you a bonus. All right? Are we all excited? Okay. So, let's first begin with the setup. What do we mean by setup? Basically, that's how you build the set. Now, there's a misconception that to be a good food photographer, you have to be a good food stylist. That's not the case. If you're good in food styling, that's a bonus. But in food styling, it's akin to if you take pictures of models and portraits, that's your hair and makeup stylist. Okay? Now, if you're good in hair and makeup styling and you do portraits, well and good. You don't have to pay a hair and makeup stylist. You can do all the job by yourself. But try doing that on a wedding. You're going to do a makeup of all the 10 entourage people. And then you're going to take a photo of them. That will be very exhausting. You will hire somebody to do that for you. And it's the same in food photography. Maybe if you're just shooting 3 or 4 or 5 max food, you can build it up yourself, and then you can shoot. But in the real world, you will be more efficient if there is a food stylist also. So basically, the food stylist is the one dealing itself in the building of the food. So that can also be the chef. But the problem is that the food stylists are more oriented towards the camera, whereas the chefs are more towards the plating. So how it will be presented to the diner. So those are two different things. Okay? Now, when we say setup, your responsibility is not really the food styling, but rather building the setup on the table. What should be included there? What should be the color of the surface? And that's the first thing that you need to do. What surface am I going to use? That establishes the mood of the picture, actually. You want a country look? Then go for a rustic surface. You want a modern look? Then go for that clean white. You want that industrial look? The current now is that you have that surfaces that look like fresh cement. That's why we have here, which iBrand is selling, okay, like this, see? So we have, you can also see one at the back there. So each sheet comes in 2 sides, All right. Do I sound like a good salesman? Okay. All right. No, I'm just telling you that are some of the things that I also use. Okay. It's quick and nifty. Yes. And however, this is 50 dirhams, but they came up with something like this hardboard. So basically, it's the same. You just put it on there. So that is more durable, but that's 100 dirhams. Okay. But two sides. And that's better before because we used to really make it out of wood. And that's quite cumbersome to carry everywhere, okay? So if you're going to buy, I would recommend just get an assortment of the types that you would prefer to use. Now, here's the rule. I would recommend if the food is warm, get a surface that is cool. Most food anyway are warm on the brown, red, orange side. Okay? Then the food will pop up more on a cool surface than on a warm surface also. Now it will be the reverse. If you're doing salads, which is on the green, blue, or red, it has a sort of red, but majority that's green, then I would recommend you can go to the warm side of the surfaces. So you can just basically take your pick. But if you want something neutral, then go for the dark gray, and so on, industrial look. Okay? So basically, that one I will leave to you based on your taste and concept of the picture. But other things like props, well, normally we get that from the kitchen or the commissary or from the client itself. But I would recommend that if you're doing this for a living, please make sure you don't go there on the day of the shoot itself. I would recommend you meet with the chef, with the owner, decide what kind of look that they want so that you will know what kind of props to bring or what will be available. Okay? Because it will be a waste of time when you're just sorting it right there and then. So even the plating itself can be different. For example, in fine dining, majority of the plates are on a big white plate. Why? This is to highlight the color and texture of the food itself. But if you try photographing that, especially up close, the food will appear like it's floating on a white surface. That's why it's quite different when you are preparing the food for the camera compared to for a diner, for the plating itself. So normally, if you want to do your own setup or if you plan to bring or make up your own bank of props, I would recommend plates that are relatively smaller. This makes the food appear bigger. So there's a difference between plating and putting it on a catalog or menu or your online website. Okay? So you want to make it appear full. So you don't want that to appear like it's floating and very small. Because once it goes to 2D print, it's hard to see the scale. Now, I told you that it's not your responsibility to style the food. However, you also have to help the chef or the food stylist. They're busy there in the kitchen. Okay? Sometimes there's just this simple smear of oil on the plate itself. Okay? Or you just need to move that olive from one side to another. Okay? It will be quite cumbersome to use your thick fingers. So that's why this is what I carry. I have the, the thongs here, all right? Tweezers, rather. That's what I use for when I'm going to move one item to another, especially in the deep recesses of the food or the dish itself. The Q-tips are for cleaning, for reaching out the inner parts of the plate, all right? You have there the brushes, okay? Because food dries out easily also. So I would just base it again with oil. I have several sizes, so that depends on how broad or how fine I need the brush to be. And then you have the spritz spray, so that's good for the salad. And if you have this glass full of a cold beverage, like a cola, all right, I would spray that. But I would mix, all right? Here's the do-it-yourself. Mix half corn syrup with water. Corn syrup and water. That's quite sticky, all right? And that would help stick the water more to the glass. Okay? For the ice, you have two options. You can buy the fake ice cubes, or if you can't wait for your online delivery, go to the spice shop. You know the alum? Alum, that's white, that's for deodorant purposes. But not the ground one, the rock. The rock. Don't get the ground, get the rock. Okay? Now, it's very rough. If you immerse it in water overnight, the ones in contact with water will be relatively smooth, so it looks like cracked ice. So you can put it there, okay? Okay. And then we have those scissors there, for example. That's basically like if you're going to cut a bun, the edges of the bun will not be perfect, so you have to trim that, okay? So those, or for bread trimming. Even for some vegetables that need some trimming. And the clay, that's basically to set up the food higher or lower or certain things. So basically, all of this, you can find this in your son or daughter's cabinet, okay? So you can just get it from there. All right, so this is my emergency styling kit. Now, the problem is, all right, if you are in the food business, here's my tip on if you are, for example, you don't want to take pictures yourself, but you're going to hire a photographer. Do not ask, of course, when you go for a casting for a photographer, they would show you portfolio of their food in different props, like splashing lemon and things like that. That will not help you as a restaurateur, because you need to see how your, at least a closer idea, how your food will look like. Will it be sexy when this guy photographs it? So I would recommend, ask for a portfolio wherein I do not want any setup styling or props. I just want the plain food. You will see the skill there of the photographer, how he would be able to manage to make the food look sexy or yummy. Now, that brings us to the two other ingredients that we have. The first is the setup, right? Now, in some cases, like fast food, notice that like Burger King or McDonald's, they place their food not on this setup, elaborate setup that is the fad today. They still use the age-old against a white background. Why? Because they're going to cut that and they're going to put that in a different layout. It has to be flexible. That's why if they put it in the website, in the leaflet, all right, in social media, it still looks great. Now, if your style of photographing food is that you are using these props, the background, the surface rather, the props behind as a crutch to make your food shot look great, and then they ask you to do this, then you have problem. So how can we solve, how to make sure that the food looks great? Ingredient number 2 and 3, composition and lighting. I repeat, composition and lighting. So let's go with the composition first. So basically, when we say composition, it's how we arrange things inside the viewfinder, correct? Now, unlike other genre of photography like landscape, you cannot do anything much with the composition. If there's the tree there, you cannot remove that unless you zoom in maybe or you pan a bit to the left to remove that tree. But in food setups, you have the full control. So it's more than just putting things inside the frame. It's also deciding what to include, what to exclude, and from where are you going to take the picture. All right, so what do we mean by that? When we take pictures, all right, the first thing that we need to decide on is from what angle are we going to take the photo. Personally, I always tell my students, photography is 90% location and the rest technique. If you are not keen on getting the right location, no matter how great the technique, the photo will just be boring. So, every food will have two sides, the face or the front and the back. That's why in culinary arts, there is what you call plating. You show the best side to the diner. So in itself, it's like if you have been watching YouTube videos on unboxing, these companies, especially tech industries, they put so much effort on the quality of their packaging. Because once you get that, you opened it, it looks great, it adds to the experience. Same with the plating. Once the food gets onto your table, you should feel excited, you should feel more hungry. As a matter of fact, we Filipinos are religious, so before we eat, we pray. These days, before we eat, we take pictures. You can see that of my kabayan, right? You know, that person, that kabayan is first time there when he begins taking pictures. Okay. All right. So, that's why sometimes I roll my eyes when a client would say, I want you to take 10 photos of the same food. This is not wedding photography. This is not even a catalog of a gadget that you have to rotate so that people will know what you're buying. There's always that one good side that's presented in the food. As a matter of fact, if you look at the menu, how many shots of a particular dish do you have? Only one. Now, if you're going to argue, but that's for social media, fine, then make variations. Like maybe this food goes with this item, or this food is best eaten outdoors, so you put a background there, right? But always show the best side. We call that the hero shot, actually. So you have to find the hero. That's the best angle. And from there, you will know what to do with the rest. So before we go to that, okay, how do we find the hero angle? Okay. When we take pictures, the safest angle to aim your camera from is the 45, more or less. Why? Anyone here knows? Sorry? It covers both of the food? Most of the food? No. With the background? No. Anyone who can answer? I will give a camera box first. Box. Light? No. What, you were saying something a while ago? Depth? No. Sorry? Layering? No. What about the position of the eye? Exactly. It's the eye. Because that's the way we normally see things. Okay? You don't look at the food like that. You're not a bird. You don't look at the food like that. You're not a dog. So basically, we respond more to the stimulus of hunger when we see that food at that normal or 45 degree. Now, I'm not going to say that you have to be close-minded that every time you take a photo of a food, it has to be at 45. No. But the safest, and if you want to get maximum response for most food, is at 45. Okay? That's why if you look at the menus, the restaurants, it's always at 45. There was a point, I was shooting for Chili's. They even have to dictate what the lighting should be. Because all the menu of a Chili's menu, regardless wherever you are, should be the same. Same with other chain of restaurants, even hotels. It has to be particular treatment. Angle, lighting especially. So even if it's a flat food, it's still safe to do it at 45. Now, this is the in thing. I see a lot of this. Top shots. That's great. But if you compare this top shot compared to a 45, which one will entice you more to eat? This one. That's why if you are anyone here as a restaurant, okay, if you are into the food business, this shot is great if you want to put it on the cover of your menu. It's great if you want to put that on the first page of your restaurant, because that's where you can put the title. That's where you can put all the other graphic elements. However, the purpose of a menu, especially the inside pages, the photograph, is to tell the diner, I want you to buy me. This one cannot do that. This will. That's why if you notice, still we use the 45. If you are a food photographer or you're planning to be one, you can produce the top shot, but always deliver also the 45. It's you owe that to your client. Because if your client stops selling, you lose a client, of course. So we want to take care of our client also. However, as I mentioned, you don't have to be always at the 45. That depends what kind of food that you are shooting. So we can still go to the high angle if you're photographing food that is basically flat, or the design is more on the horizontal orientation. Example, pizza pie. You can go for a high angle for that. Okay? Or in a cake, and you're trying to emphasize the decor there, because you won't be able to see it much at 45. Now, replace that with a burger. Do you think? Right? Without removing the top bun. So for food that has height, layering, like a slice of a cake, and you have those 4 layers there, all right? Then that's when you go low. Sometimes to the point lower to make it look more gigantic. That's right. See how those pancake shots are made? You don't see a top shot of the pancake, but you want to see how thick and fluffy they are, right? So, you have to check. That's why you have to go to your client first, a day before at least. What are the food that you're going to photograph? Can I have a look at them? You don't, or if that's not possible, ask how it looks like. It doesn't have to be a perfectly made one. Just a photo from the phone will do. You'll have a better idea already. Okay? So, this is okay for the top shot because the client wanted to show it on a very thin 1-inch clay plate. So it doesn't make sense to go on a 45 or almost a level shot here. But for the same dish, cooked in this manner, it will be, of course, useless to show this, in a vertical manner. So we go for the horizontal when the subject is high. I repeat, when do we go for a low angle? When there is height in it. Okay? And when do we go for a high angle? When it's flat, basically. That's correct. Okay? So the next question now is this. Where do we focus the lens? Okay? Of course, we focus on the food, but which part of the food? Usually, that would be the main ingredient. Like in the case of a salad, for example, there'd be a lot of different ingredients there. But what is it mostly made of, or what is the major feature of that one? That's where you're going to focus. Basically, you have 2 considerations when you focus on the food. Do you want a limited depth or amount of focus, which is usually done for magazines or editorial, or in menus also? Or Would you prefer that everything is sharp or clear? So that would be in the case of, let's say, packaging also, when you need to cut something and then replace it on a different background. So what are the things that will help you get better or more efficient in your composition setup or arrangement? Well, believe it or not, the first thing that I would recommend is to invest on a good tripod. I repeat, invest on a good tripod. Why? Because when you do setups of food, you are very meticulous as to how the composition, how the lighting should look. If you are holding your camera, taking pictures, and you did not like the way the light is hitting the food, what will you do? You will go there, make adjustments, and then go back here again, correct? By the time you go back here, it's no longer the same angle, because you won't be able to replicate that exact angle. So by the time you look at the shot, the frame again, maybe the lighting is different. That's why to make things consistent, we always put the camera on a tripod so that we can see the changes that we're going to make. And that is regardless if you are making changes in the composition, setup, or lighting. So invest on a good tripod. Next thing, what is the best camera for that? Nikon, of course. Okay, but I'm not going to go into that, all right? Rather, what lens should you have? That's the more important thing. If I were you, just ditch your kit lens, not because it's bad, but because usually kit lenses only go up to what? 45, 55, and so on. Okay? So invest on a lens that's dedicated for food photography. I can really be a good salesman, right? Okay. All right. So I would recommend at least 70, but don't go longer than 100, 105. At most 120. 120 is actually too much. Actually, you could use your 24 to 70 if you have, all right? You could use your 85 if you have. But the problem with 85 is that the minimum focusing distance is quite long. So you cannot take detailed shots there if you do a close-up, or if you have to photograph small items, okay? Okay, there we go. So that's why I would recommend if you can get a macro lens. The macro lens can be your 105, or if you're using the crop frame, the 60 will do. Now, as long as you don't go less than 70 or 60. 50, I can already see the distortion, especially if you apply it on a full frame. So if you're using a crop frame, you can still make do with a 60 mm like this, okay? And I don't care much about the lens speed, like, oh, does it has to be 2.8, okay? Or I'm going to use this lens because it has 1.4 or 1.8. We rarely go to that extreme. One time, I had a client, a new one, and they asked me to photograph their food because the previous photographer, it was a pizza. Maybe he got so excited with this speed that the only thing sharp on the pizza was the olive. So how can you sell that? Not even the entire slice is sharp. So that's why you rarely go bigger, meaning lower than f4 or 5.6. If you want to blur the background, then we still don't go bigger or lower than f4. We just move the background objects farther to emphasize the blur there and use a longer focal length. So that's why we have the 105. Okay? It flattens the perspective, so the distance between the food and the background objects will not be that obvious, which it will be if you're shooting at around 70 or 60, or even at 85. Okay? So The macro lens is more for, sorry, okay, that was my alarm for I have to fetch my son, but I'm sorry. I'm here today. Okay, somebody's doing that for me. Okay, so this is the difference basically only of a macro and a non-macro. It allows you to really go close. So this is perfect when you are photographing the small pastries that I saw there outside. Okay, to really, really zoom in, or rather go in and go closer than that. Especially like this case. We're asked to photograph, because we have to put it only, this is the side. So we have to make a shot for the side. So a simple fries like that. Okay? That made me hungry. All right. Yes, it has to be a macro shot. Is it still possible to do this without a macro lens? Yes, but you will have to crop your shot. So that means you will have to zoom in, you have to crop on that computer, and that's basically throwing pixels away. If it's going to be used for social media and website, it doesn't matter. But if you're going to, use that for the print or roll-up banners, then it could matter. Okay? So don't think that, my shot will not be featured in a, a billboard. Who knows, maybe one day you'll see your shot there, right? Okay. So, the third ingredient, and for me, this is the one that I really love showing and teaching, lighting. When I started in photography, this is the first thing that I really tried to master even before I got to know everything about my camera. Why? Because if you notice, when we were just learning how to take pictures with our camera, there's so much to learn about the camera that our only concern is aperture and shutter, and ISO. Because why? It affects the brightness of the photograph in relation to lighting. Correct. But you can do a lot more when you master lighting, meaning you alter the light even before it reaches your lens. That's why, if you notice, sometimes when the lighting condition is great, somebody takes your picture and the people would say, "Oh, you look handsome there." You don't know if you'll be happy or not. Maybe because of the lighting, you look handsome there or pretty, right? And it's the same for food. So what are the things that we can use when taking pictures? As a hobbyist photographer, you are very much accustomed to ambient light, what we have here. But I am sorry if you're trying to do this on a professional level or try to elevate your food photography, that's one thing that you should not try to depend on. Because no matter how good the lighting of the restaurant is, that's for the dining experience, not for the camera. That's why I would recommend you bring your own light. So, that goes to the problem. This is the part wherein I'm going to say it's expensive. Not really. What you want is the right light, not an expensive light. If the expensive light is right for you, by all means. But it has to be the proper light for the kind of food shots that you create. So let's go with the cheapest. You can buy this in Amazon. CFL lamps. The problem here is color. There is that tinge of cyan or green that sometimes it's a pain to correct, even in Lightroom or Capture One. Okay? Plus the fact that it's kind of weak. If you're doing this at home and you can control the lighting of your kitchen or your room, then by all means, go with this budget lighting. The idea here is to make sure that you do not include, these are lights that could mix with the setup. That's why if you take pictures with your phone in the restaurant, no matter how good the food looks, there's still something missing there. And that's because of the lighting. It's not apt for the shop. Okay? So let's go to something a bit more expensive. Okay? The LEDs. Now, the nice thing about LEDs is that they are relatively stronger. Not like in the previous one, the wattage also depends on how many bulbs you use. If you have ever used one of these, it looks like you're taking pictures inside the toilet because it's white. Okay. So I would prefer this one, the LED. There's something wrong with my, okay, the LEDs. However, if you're going to choose between two LEDs, I would recommend the one, not the flat, not the rectangular, but the one that you can attach modifiers. Example would be this one. Okay? So, Shaji, what's the brand of this one? Okay. Gion, how much for the light alone?
This light alone is 1,300 dirhams.
1,300 dirhams.
This is 600 dirhams.
600 dirhams. Going to give it to you for 400. Okay. All right. So, the nice thing about this is that you can remove the modifier. So, this is a universal type, I would say, because Bowens is accepted by many brands, the Bowens mount rather. So you can replace this with a rectangular or square softbox. Okay? So this makes the light diffuse. We're going to talk about that in a while. Okay? And you can have also, you get a higher wattage there for the LEDs. Some are even 500. So the nice thing is that the more powerful the light is, it will be easier for you to work like in our location right now. So if you have a weak light, it will be difficult without having some of the external lights affecting your shop. That's why go for a very powerful one, maybe at least 100 watts. Okay, this is 100 watts. And that means you really have to bring it closer, but it's not an issue because you're not taking pictures of portraits or people. You're taking pictures of food. So you can bring it as close as possible as long as you don't include the light, of course, in the shop. Now, if you want, however, there are restaurants that use glass walls from ceiling to floor. Now, that will be really a pain. A lot of light coming in because the restaurants are designed that way to give that fresh look or ambiance. So that's the time you can go use your speed lights, because speed lights are a lot stronger. Even if there is that light coming from the window illuminating the table where you're going to take a picture, it will not be included, I assure you. The only issue with speed lights is that it has a limited way of attaching modifiers. This one is designed to accept different soft boxes. For speed lights, limited sizes only. Plus the fact that you can't see how the light will fall on the subject. Because this is an LED and it throws continuous light, you'd be able to see how the light will look. This one, it will only appear you will only see how it looks once you take the shot. However, it comes very handy. Okay? Because if you bring in like this and your client did not ask permit from the mall, definitely you will be stopped. All right? But with this one, they might let you in. Which reminds me, one time, I did a photo tour in Armenia, and we had to go to this park. All my participants were carrying those big guns, the 850. 7200, all right? Z9, Z7. And the guard stopped them, okay? And what happened? You're not allowed to go because you're using professional equipment, okay? So, okay, all right. But what about him? They pointed at me. And I was carrying a Z30. He can go. And I was even wearing the jacket of Nikon. It says professional. He's the professional. No, you are the professional. You have the big camera. Okay. All right. So, but again, regardless of the size of the gear, you have to make the most out of it. Now, if you want something that's really dedicated to your kind of photography, which is food, I would recommend investing on a studio light. Now, you might think, oh, this is quite difficult to use because we have those external buttons there that we need to master. And it's a different ball game because the speed light is easy. You just put it to TTL, right? And you keep on firing. Well, you're talking about the old style like the SK400 type, manual type of flash. Actually, it's not even an old type anymore. It's a digital and TTL. So, one example is this. If you need to have a low profile, then I use this one. It's an AD100. It's 100 joules, not watts, okay? In flash, they say watts per second. It's different from continuous light that is watts. So how many watts can this pump out if you let the strobe open for 1 second? Because you're dealing with a very short burst, okay? But we don't fire this for 1 second. This will burn, okay? It's only a fraction of a second that this brings out the light, okay? So this is battery powered, all right? And just put it there, attach also a Bowen's type, and that's it, okay? So the nice thing is that, I can show this to you later, you basically have to set your camera even to A mode, okay? Do you have an A mode? It's Anon, okay? So we don't have an A mode there, it's AV, okay? So it's the same. A or AV, that's automatic, right? I would say semi-automatic because you select the aperture and then the camera gives you the shutter speed, correct? So this light will also work with that. So you don't have to think about, oh, do I have to measure? Because in the old days, we need this to measure the lights so that you always get the right exposure. But these days, as you will see later when we do our trials, you just put your camera to A and that's it. You can fire, right? Yeah, this one is continuous light, and this two, and this one is also a flash or strobe. Now, still, don't be misled. Just because it's just pumping out one burst of light, it's weak. It's not. It can rival the noontime sunlight. As a matter of fact, you can achieve settings here even as f16. ISO 100. When do you use f16? Only when you're shooting outdoors using ISO 100, shutter speed of 1/125 or 160, right? You can't do that here with continuous light. That's the issue. Because if you try to use a very high wattage, you will need very big blowers, and it could, in the olden days, it was very hot. Fortunately, LED is invented. Okay, so aside from the lights, what else do we need? Reflectors. Okay. So you can have a do it yourself, a do it your own, or you can buy like this from Amazon. So you just basically prop it there. Or just let it stand there. Or this one we use when we're trying to photograph transparent glass like vase or bottles. Okay? But if you get it now, I'm going to give it to you for $49. Okay, all right. Okay, it's just around 50 dirhams, 50 plus, something like that. Okay, now you might think, yeah, we can always do a makeshift or do it yourself. Just get a foam board from the office supplies, correct? However, presentation is everything. There's restaurants that don't like to have your setup there because it's an eyesore, especially fine dining. You have to be as discreet as possible or unobtrusive. So at least this one makes it look more nice, okay? Another, but I can't help this, is to get your wife's, okay, why? Because there are parts of the food that cannot be reached by a regular reflector because this is broad and not highly reflective. Compared to a mirror that is highly reflective but can focus the light. This one you can get from IKEA before. This is plastic mirror. Then you can also buy the one for the car. Okay. And then I just tape it here. Sorry?
I use that one.
Oh, you used the...
Yeah, I have.
Okay. So it has a concave. Yeah. So it has a concave and a convex. You can even control the beam. All right. And this one for broad, okay? All right. Looks okay. All right. Now, why is this important? You can take pictures even if you're just using one light. The problem is that if you're just using one light, there will be, regardless what light you're using, LED or flash, this one was made by flash, okay? There will always be a shadow at the opposite side. This one compared to this one. So to lift the shadow details and reduce the contrast, we add a reflector or a mirror. That's why it's possible to take pictures even only using one light. And I would recommend that you start with one light. Once you master one light, then you can proceed with the next. Because the other lights that you're going to use are just actually support or secondary. So master first one light because that's your main light. Now, for example, we use the mirrors to put back some of the light on the left side or camera left. Why? Because the main light is coming from the back and from the right. So the shadow will be on the left side. So those mirrors are catching the light from the strobes, going back to that shadow area, lifting details. Same here for this slice of samosa. So basically, this is the schematic there. The light from behind, all right? And then there's a reflector there. It could be a mirror, it could be a big reflector, it's up to you as long as you can have some of that light reach that part of the samosa. Right. So that's how useful, no matter how cheap this may be. Now, another important thing is the color. So, how do we make sure you get the right color? One is setting your white balance properly, especially if you're shooting in JPEGs, because you don't have a chance to correct it or change it later on in Lightroom. So I would recommend try to shoot in RAW. If you haven't been shooting in RAW, because you don't know yet how to convert RAW files into JPEG, ask somebody to set your camera so that it will shoot in RAW and JPEG. So that later on, when you learn how to use Lightroom or Capture One, you can go back to those RAW shots of yours before and make a new JPEG. Okay? But we make sure also that, oh, by the way, if your camera supports a Kelvin adjustment, I would recommend you set it between 5.2 to 5,500 or 600. Because if you're using speed lights or studio flash, because that's the color temperature of these flash units. With LEDs, it's more flexible. you can adjust the color temperature here. So you can put it to 5,500 and then make sure in your white balance you set it also to 5,500. That will give you correct or more natural looking colors. However, just to make sure that we get our colors right for the menu, we always make sure that we get, once the setup of the light is made, we take one shot at least of the color checker. So, why is this? Because you might think you're producing the right colors, but you are editing with your computer that is not calibrated. How do you know that is the right shade of red for the bell pepper or it's the right shade of yellow for the curry? So it could look different. If you just put your one image into three different computers, they will all look different. That's why I recommend also, please invest on a monitor calibrator, like Spider, for example, or Color Monkey. Now, what do we do with this one? If we shoot in RAW, and I import my photos into Lightroom or Capture One, I will go to the white balance and just simply click on the white, and it will come out naturally. This can also be used for portraits. So as you can see here, there's a symbol of a person. You want to make the shot a bit more cooler or warmer, you just click on one of these. Now, if your monitor is not calibrated, it might not appear that so, but you can be assured it's the right values there. Okay? So that's the, at least we take one shot of this color patch. Now, another important is this, the quality of the light. And I'm not talking about the quality of the brand of the light. I'm talking about these two things, hard light, and hard light is produced by small light sources. That would be your flash on the camera or on the speed gun itself. Okay? So, we don't really use this directly, immediately. How would you know it's hard light? There is a distinct boundary between the shadow and the highlights. Second, there is the hot spot, even if it's not that shiny. That's why even if you have your makeup really thick and somebody takes your picture and it's still shiny, that's because maybe the light is not diffused enough or soft enough. And third, there is a hard outline of the shadow. It doesn't have to be this dark. It could be a very light shadow, but the outline is definitely there. That's what we call hard light. Now, the second type is the soft light. Which one would you prefer? The soft light, especially for portraits. How would you know the light is soft? The boundary between the dark and the bright is no longer distinct. It's gradual. The hot spot is gone. Where's the shadow? It's still there. That's why it's relatively dark. But the outline is soft. You can't distinguish it anymore. So, how do you make the light soft? By making it larger. Physically and literally, you cannot make the flash tube bigger. But you can make the effective light source bigger by attaching modifiers. So this area here, that white fabric, becomes the effective light source. So you put the flash here, this becomes the effective light source. And because it's bigger, it becomes softer. And that's the nice thing about soft light. It wraps the light around the subject. And that makes the inner recesses of the food illuminated. Therefore, the shadows are not that deep. You don't really want to kill the shadows because you need that. Because food strength is texture aside from color. I repeat, texture and color. These are the two things that we want to keep. Now, remember this because this will have a bigger impact on the next topic. So with the soft light, even with just one light source, I don't have to put reflectors, maybe minimal. I don't have to use 2 more lights or 3 more lights because it will definitely wrap around the subject. That's why for most food, soft lighting is the preferred one. So the bigger the softbox, the softer the light. But please take note, don't try to get the biggest fabric. We also want to preserve a bit of shadows there. We just want to control the shadows, not eliminate that. Because remember, texture is a strong characteristic of food. If you remove the texture, you make the food look less yummy. So we need to keep that. Okay? Now, let's go back to the hard light. This is what most people ignore. Because if you ask many photographers, okay, put on the softbox, put on the umbrella. Why? Because many people are afraid to use the hard light. Me, I love using hard light. But it doesn't look nice on the hard, what's happening? It doesn't look nice on the food itself, right? But before we go there, how do we make the light hard? By trying to limit the size. So if you've seen some attachments in the studio that looks like a cone, that's what they call snoot, you're not really limiting only the light beam there. You're making it small to make it look harder.
Light focus.
Okay, the one with the lens. Oh no, because if you put the snoot there, most people think that the light will just be straight like that. No, it will still continue to spread out. Yes, that's a misconception. Unless you put the light close to the subject, then the beam will be smaller. But if you pull it away, it becomes bigger. It defeats the purpose. Okay? Basically, the purpose of this is to make the light harder. Okay? If you just want to control the beam, either put it closer or get an attachment wherein you have the lens. You can control the beam there. Okay? Now, when do we use this hard light? This is a honey cake, illuminated by a soft box. Take note, it's not really out of focus, but it looks like that. Now, this next shot was illuminated using a hard light. You can see the texture there. Side by side. That's why if you're photographing, let's say, okay, if you're photographing a whole cake, then you can use the soft light there. But if you slice the cake to show the layers and show it on the side to see the texture, all right, then that's when you use the hard light. Another example of an object that could benefit from hard light, slices of bread. Okay? Because the pores of the slice of the bread there will disappear if you use a soft light. Cookies, to bring out the really texture there. So this is basically the schematic of that one. See? So you have a fill light here from the top, but forget that for now. The main light is from here, skimming that, and then a reflector here to reduce the shadows. It's a skill to master, but once you get that, I tell you, your food shots will never be the same again. As a matter of fact, if you look at all the food shots, most of them are using soft light. But the best ones, there's that they inject a bit of hard light here and there to add that sparkle or sheen and texture. So you can combine both actually. So you might think that the hard light is only good for the food. No. I also use that to bring out the foam in the coffee. If you use the soft box there, those small bubbles there will just disappear. It will just be one white mass. Because inside those small micro bubbles, the shadows are gone. You need that shadows there to make sure that you see the micro bubbles there. So, when do we use hard light? When we want to reveal those fine coarseness in it, like bread, foam. Okay? Sorry? Jewelry, yeah, to add that sparkle there. But most of the time, you want it also soft. Okay. Sorry?
Shiny.
Yeah, for the shine, for the sparkle. For the sparkle. Okay. Now, if you look at the lights here, there would be knobs. But the major knob actually is about how to control the power of the light. So do not be intimidated by that. There is just one knob there that would increase or decrease the power of the light. So in this case, the plus minus, that is just to increase the power, and same with the knob here. So you just rotate that. Now you might be thinking, why do we need to adjust the power of the light when we can adjust the aperture, right? Well, number one, remember that aperture controls your depth of field. So sometimes you need a shot that wherein everything is sharp. So you should not be really playing with or being variable too much with your aperture. However, you can adjust the power of the light so you can get the right aperture. Or you can use the right aperture. Like in this case, the requirement was that I don't care where you place the food because we're going to cut it anyway. That means everything must be sharp from the closest lip of the bowl up to the back. So to do that, I will have to use, let's say, F16 to get more depth of field. Therefore, you will have to use a light that is capable of producing light at that aperture. And normally, take note, we shoot as much as possible at the lowest ISO that you have, 100. Now, if you have 64, even better. Okay? So when you blow it up, it will not be that grainy or noisy. Because even at 100, it could still be noisy or grainy. It's not just that obvious. So when you cut it, okay, there you go. Fine. But it depends on the requirement of the shot. So in some cases, you want to make sure that this is sharp, and this one, it has to be limited in sharpness because you want to emphasize maybe the ingredients or so on. So that depends on the requirement of the shot. So for this case, I have to shoot at 5.6. Now, that's the nice thing when you're shooting with, let's say, strobes like this. Why? Because when you shoot with a strobe like this, and you set it to TTL, for example, you're shooting at 1 point F16. So everything will be sharp, correct? And then the client said, I need also a shot wherein the background is blurred. If you're going to use the manual lights like this, or manual strobes, you will have to adjust the power. because it's producing for F16. That will be too bright. Now, with this type, you just basically adjust your setting from F16 to, let's say, 5.6, and the strobe will do the rest. It will adjust itself, so it will not be overexposed. So that's the nice thing there, okay? Now, for the most important element of the light, as I mentioned a while ago, positioning is important, right? Where you're going to take it. Same also with the lighting. Where should the light come from? And I want you to really pay extra attention on this one. Because if you need to go home now and bring home something from me, this should be it. You can forget the rest, but not this one. Where should the light come from? If you've been observant enough to take details, notice of details in the previous lighting setup I showed you a while ago, one is something common in the light that I showed you. Anyone? Okay. 45? Yeah. What's that?
Zero.
Sorry?
Yeah, like this, not 45.
Not 45, not too high?
Yeah, like this.
Like on the level?
Yeah,
Okay, from the side? The position of the light is what?
Mostly reflected light, so the light is in front.
Sorry?
The light is in front,
Okay.
and it's always reflected back on the
All right. Okay. This is actually a good example. Where do you think the light is coming from?
45.
From the back, basically. Is correct. The light is coming basically from the back.
And
We never put the light in front. That's quite counterintuitive, right?
this product and the table, right?
It comes from the back.
Like this.
Yes. You're going to do that in a while, okay? So,
If I put right,
you don't put it from where you are. You put it on the opposite side. That's possible, but depends on certain items. Okay? But majority is from the back. Okay? You can move your light at any angle. Of course, there will be shadow at the front. That's why you need your reflector. In more advanced lighting, you put another light there. But for starters, this will do. Now, you can position your light there or there, as long as it doesn't cross outside the green zone. It could be a bit of the top, but never to the front. Okay? From a vertical point of view, it could be here. It could be there or there. But never cross the green zone. And a lot of people are afraid to put the light that way because it becomes a silhouette, right? But you're not photographing a person, so there's no silhouette there. Okay, I'll go to that in a while. All right? So, this is the general approach. If you don't have to think of anything, just put it at the back. That's it. But you have to adjust it depending on how it looks now. That's more on your creative effect or license. But in general, it has to come from the back. This is true story because I see this. There are leaflets that I find in our lobby of food. And the food is lit up this way. Where's the light coming from? Camera left, your side. It's like taking a portrait of a dead chicken. Okay? Food is not a person. Now, so basically, that's where the light comes from. Okay, and that's what I see most of the time in the flyers. A lot of photographers will hate me for this, but you better learn this because this will improve your lighting. Now, what will happen if we bring it to the back? You see not only the color, but it brings out also the texture. And that's the only thing that you need to think about. So, before, after. Now, there's still some shadow, okay? There's still some shadow. This is the front. This is the back. And we still have shadow there, right? What do we do with that? We put a reflector, correct. So this is now the one with the reflector. This is without the reflector. See, only one light. Just this one. Buy this and your lights will improve. I'm really good at salesman here. Okay, all right. So the light is coming from here and the reflector is there. Okay. But I still find this dark. But only that part. Do I put a reflector? No. You can use your mirror because you only need a particular spot. And this is the one without the mirror. This is with the mirror. Big difference. Before, after. So, the positioning, you have the light, you have the reflector, and now you have the mirror. So this is the before and the after. This is the front lighting that most people do. This is the back lighting that you have to do. So with that, you can bring out both the color and the texture of any food that you take pictures of. So in general, it has to be from the back. You can adjust the height or the angle, but it should always be in general from the back. Now, the next question is this. You can't do that, let's say you're photographing a burger, right? Because for the burger, you have to be at the eye level to see the layer, the height stack, correct? So, you can't do a top light there from the back because it will obviously become a silhouette, right? So what can you do? This is when the side lighting comes in. But take note, when we side light, we don't really do a side because of the broad area of the softbox. Some of that light will reach the front if it's placed here. That will kill the texture. So if you put the light just slightly behind, some of that light will still illuminate the front. But because it's an angle, it will still bring out the right amount of texture. That's why you can always bring that left or right as long as it doesn't cross to the front. That's the point. It doesn't cross to the front. Okay? Again, it always has to be from the side. Now, as a finishing touch, most food are glossy because of the basting, because of the sauce, because of the gravy. And you want to bring that out because it will appear it's just fresh from the kitchen. There are times we're photographing food that is already stone cold. But because we basted it with olive oil, for example, it still looks fresh and hot. That's basically the key. That's why I told you to always bring the paintbrush. Okay? So, how do we do reflection lighting? This one you have to be more precise. Where is the camera? Here. So that means the camera and the food and the light must be in alignment. Okay? And as for the horizontal point of view, this is what it should be. Okay? You're trying to catch the reflection of the light on the surface, like this. So that means, okay, when the light from the back strikes the subject, you should be able to catch the reflection. So how do you set it up? First, remember, you need to set up the angle of your camera, right? Because that's the hero angle, that's the best shot. Then that's the time you adjust the light so that you can see it from the viewfinder that you're catching the reflection. That's why if you're using your speed light, that's quite impossible because it doesn't have a modeling light. But with an LED or a studio flash with a modeling light, it's possible. Okay? Now, again, it has to be in alignment because objective is to catch that reflection. So, here, this dish is already quite cold, but because of the oil there, that's the one that we're trying to produce, the catch there, the catch of the reflection there. So again, it's just a straightforward alignment. It's just a matter of adjusting the height to get the reflection. See? So by the way, this is like a Filipino version of creme brulee. The original syrup is thin and runny and watery. So we substituted the pancake syrup here, but it looks the same as well. So you can see here there, okay? So, again, the light must be placed where? From the back. Always remember that, from the back. And preferably, soft light, okay? The only time we do hard light is when there's fine texture. But most food need soft light. And because you're still here, you don't have to memorize all this now because you can download a copy. All right? So you can put this on your mobile showing the key points of our lecture. And then, if you need to refer to it because you forgot it, then just go back there. Okay? So you can download it later, basically. All right. So let's do this. So we're going to take a photo of, let's say, sorry? Oh, yes.
I used to shoot for Taliban, and we were never allowed to use light from the back. It has to be always from the front. And is it because it's just an e-commerce shoot you use light from the
Even in e-commerce, for e-commerce, basically, you just want a simple, you have to emphasize the food itself, right? Like, so plain background, normally none, almost. Or just zoom in on the food, okay? Well, that's because maybe they haven't realized the importance of backlighting, okay? Because I trained the people from Best Bites, and now they're slowly trying to implement it. The only issue with them is that they can't afford to bring lights like this because they always have to be in a hurry. So that's the issue.
When you set up at the mall setup and getting through the
Yes, that's the issue. Yes. So that's why this is the solution there. Alan, can we set it up? All right. So if you have your camera with you, we can try. All right. So we can try with this light also. So with this light, the problem is that we will have to use a higher ISO. Okay. So higher ISO will mean more noisy images. But that's the thing that we can do. The only thing that we can do. So first setup, we're going to put the food here. Now, because most of the food that we have here are on the warm side, we will have to use a cool color. Okay. So let's use that one. Okay, so let's put it here. So this is glossy, right? So again, let's review. What will be the settings there now? First, for the focal length, please use at least 70 or longer. Okay. If you have a macro lens, that would be great. Next, if you're planning to use LED lights, I would recommend you just use A mode, A or AV in your camera, for the simple reason that this is not moving anyway. Okay, so what about the shutter speed? Well, since you are shooting in A mode, the camera will set the shutter for you. AV, AV, yes. Now, if you're going to shoot in AV, the camera will give you the shutter, but the problem is, what if the shutter speed is too low? Then you will have to use a tripod. Okay? If you don't have a tripod, then you will have to use a higher ISO. Okay, so to do that, all right, there are cameras, especially in Nikon, when you go to auto ISO, when you set the auto ISO on, you can specify what is the slowest shutter speed it will use. So if you go there, you specify, let's say, 1/60. So that means if the lighting condition says that we need the shutter speed faster, slower than 1/60, but you have set a flooring of 1/60, the camera will automatically increase the ISO for you. So you don't have to think about it. So you have two options. Set a manual ISO, but if the shutter speed is too low, you will have to increase the ISO. So it's a nuisance. So just go for auto ISO and set the minimum shutter speed, like 1/60 or 1/25, all right? Next, focal length. I would recommend at least 70 millimeter or 85, okay? So if you have a 24-70, just put it straight to 70. If you only have a kit lens, then just use 18-55, put it to 55, and don't do anything else, okay? Now, there are two, what do you call this? There are two pastries here, okay? Which one to focus on? I would go for the closer one. Why? Because if you're going to focus on the farther one and the foreground object is obviously blurred in the picture, it looks odd. So it looks kind of weird. Why? Put out your palm in front of you and look at it. Just go ahead, focus on your palm. Right? The background floor is blurry, correct? Now look at your palm and try to focus on the floor. It looks weird that there's a blurred palm in front of you. Okay? So basically that's the concept. Same if you're going to photograph landscape. Let's say it's a field of wheat. Where do you focus? Don't focus on the middle. Focus on the lower third of the frame, because that's where people expect things to be sharp, because you're relatively looking at that closer. Okay. Now, what do we do next? Setting, white balance. You based it on the kind of light you're using. So in this case, the white balance setting here is, I saw it, 5,400. It was 5,400. Yeah, you can vary it, but there are cameras here that cannot adjust the Kelvin. So the closest to 5,400 is the sunny or daylight setting in your white balance. Okay? So it's almost the same as the sunny or daylight, 5,400 or 5,500. That should bring you true to life colors, or close to true to life. Okay, next, everybody come here please. Come, approach. Okay. Kuha ka pa nga ng isa pa doon lang. Ng warm. All right. So next, where are we going to place the light? Okay. The light should come from behind. Okay. But because of the shiny nature of our item, I will not going to use this light. I'm going to use this light for this one, which we're going to set up there. Okay? So instead, I'm going to use this light. Why? Because of the square nature. It's neutral. The shiny blueberry cream there will reflect the round shape. And it's distracting. Whereas with the perpendicular edges, it looks more neutral. Okay? Alan, forget it. Come here. Okay. So we'll just use this one for this one. Okay? Oh, wait. I prefer this one. So we're going to use this here. Okay. Balik that. All right. So, Alan, bring this there. Bring this one first. Okay. And we're going to use this one here for that rustic look. All right. Huh. Maybe these are leftovers. Okay. All right. I will not dwell on the setup here, okay? We'll focus more on how the light will fall on the subject. That's more important. Because later on, you can just put all the props that you want. What's important is the, okay. It's good. Okay. Lemon. All right. So, also, by the way, when you're assisting a food photographer, do not eat what the photographer doesn't eat. One time, we just put back the dessert, ice cream, lava cake back to the kitchen. And then all the crew there were shouting, "Yeah!" Because it was just a mock-up of a mashed potato. Okay, so this is the issue there. See, because of the light, we cannot dim that. Okay, people will get angry. Okay, but if we're using the speed light, which we're going to do later, you will see it doesn't really matter. Sorry?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
If I have more than two pieces like this,
Mm-hmm.
how shoot this one or in the middle or what? Where we want to put the focus? Yeah.
Where to put the focus?
This is
I would normally go for the closest one.
one that.
Yeah.
This is two pieces, right?
Yeah.
This one more.
Yes.
How I can put focus in the.
You can focus. You can focus here, even here. What's important is the amount of focus that you have also. Because you want to make sure everything is sharp here. So that means you will have to use a smaller opening, like 8 or 11. Okay? It doesn't mean that if you focus here, the rest will be blurred. It depends on the amount of depth of field that you have, meaning it depends on the aperture. So if you're using f5.6 and you focus here, this could be blurred. Yes. If that is the case, then just focus on the more important one. So if that's the more important one, the most beautiful one at the front, then focus there. Okay? But if you want more depth of focus here, because even though you focus here, you still want the others here to be clear also, then use a relatively smaller opening like f8. Yes. Now, if you're notice, I'm talking about very small openings, relatively f8. Why? Because when you go close, the depth of field also shrinks. Okay? That's why we rarely go beyond or bigger than 2.8, because that will just make maybe some of the pistachios here, the only one sharp and the rest blurred. Okay? So, what is the white balance? You're going to put daylight because this is set to 5,400. So, the equivalent. It's okay, 5,000. Okay, but this one is 5,400. If you can put it to 5,400 or, okay, that should be better. But, oh, that's okay, 5,500. Because this is lower, this is 5,400, but 100 degrees is irrelevant, basically. But if this is relatively lower, like 200 Kelvin, this will make the food warmer. So it's better to have the food more on the warm side than on the cold side or blue side. Okay? So Okay. So we need to position it. Okay. Now, say sana on. Ito. Okay, so hopefully we can see the effect there. There. I'm not going to go for a full top because I want to show the texture there. See? You see the way they produce those cream there? The ridges. If this was taken at the top, you will lose that. And if you go to the front, sorry, it will be even more. See, you don't see the ridges anymore. So we want to make sure it's a balance between texture and color. So now, you might think, oh, there will be shadow there. Then you can always put a reflector. See, did you see the effect there? Without, with. See? So that makes a big difference.
Now here, I'm here, I shoot. The light opposite.
Yes. So what will happen there is that, so even with the mobile phone actually, you can already see the result. Now if you're going to take a picture with the mobile phone, please use the tele setting. Okay, not the wide, tele. The telephoto setting. Or digital zoom. Okay, so you just zoom in like that. Go close up. Because if you use the wide, it will distort the proportion. So since the light is from here, you will have to shoot from that side. Okay?
If it's a room with full of windows, I can close the windows and this is the only light you want, or you want?
Yes, preferably close the windows if you can. Because the closer the window, the darker the area, that means you can only, you'll be only using this lighting.
I've got a video light, Amaran 200D. Can I use that for photos as well? It's fine.
It's a video light?
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem, as long as you can diffuse it.
Yeah, I have a
Okay, and it's relatively powerful compared to the other lights there.
200D.
Well, that depends on how bright the area also.
No, I can close the area and just.
Oh,
use
that's
that?
perfect. That's perfect. Perfect. Always make sure that it's close, especially you're using continuous light.
Okay.
Okay.
And for videos, again, you prefer backlight?
Yes. The same, by the way, the same lighting principle will apply to videos also.
So what I find is, backlight is beautiful because I recently discovered and I'm like, okay, it's so much. But there's always a shadow. So while I'm taking the video, I should use a reflector.
Yes. It's the same things. Okay. The only problem there is that because you're moving, it also has to move. So you need to have a setup that, it rotates. You have to have a custom turntable.
So maybe while I'm taking video,
There are setups like that it rotates.
the reflector has to be like.
So the food is fixed, but there is this arm there, so it rotates wherever you go. Okay? Now, if you want to take a photo with the strobe, we do it in manual way. Okay? So if you're going to shoot that, you just use your plus minus to adjust the brightness. Yes? Sorry?
I put in many one already.
Okay, well, as long as you get the right combination. So what's your aperture? Maybe you can use f8 here or f8. Can I see that? Okay. Because that's usually in the middle setting.
Can I take my shots?
Okay, then enlarge it. Okay, that looks great. Yeah, perfect. See? So take
Because
note.
I focus in the middle, what you say, what you
That's perfect because what they call this, even though this is the beauty of the lighting, even though, take note, yeah,
This
great.
F4.
It's this F4. So the nice thing about lighting, oh yeah, it's also amazing, great. Because even though the preparation is not perfect, okay, because of course the chefs will put more extra care if it's for the camera. But even if it's just something that you just took from the shelf, because of the lighting and the angle, it will look perfect already. All right? So let's try it this time with the studio flash. All right?
Hindi pwede lagyan ng ano sir.
Ha?
Kasi walang saksakan ng ano pala.
Walang saksakan?
Oo.
Okay. Unfortunately, my trigger is only for Nikon. So, yes. So because this is dedicated for Nikon, okay? Nikon body. So you will have to use a other side. I can. Okay. So this time, because it's shiny, we will have to use. Mhm. Okay. So, lapit mo pa lang. Okay. So, this is the only thing that, all right, it doesn't look so strong like that. So, you cannot preview how it looks like, right? Because the modeling lamp here is weak. However, if you take a photo, that pop-up flash is powerful enough to reduce or remove the other light sources. Okay? So, would you like to try this one? Okay. You can put your camera to manual exposure. Now, this is okay. Just use shutter speed 1/160. This is your sync speed. Actually, it's 250, but I prefer 1/160. All right, ISO 100. Yes, okay. And then you can just play with the aperture.
How much?
Okay, let's try f4. All right. Okay, so wait, you have to focus here. All right. Oh yeah, it's in manual. Anong letter to, Lan? A. Okay, I have to turn off this one first. And then this is A. A. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Are you? What is your go to? Let's start with f8. It's too shallow depth of field. Start with f8. Yes. Go ahead. All right. ISO 100. Okay. So focus on this part. Okay. All right. So enlarge it. As you can see the gloss there. So did you see the food in the? Did you see the softbox in the shot?
No.
No. So that means if you cannot see the softbox in the shot, you can still bring it closer to make it more diffused. Okay. So bring it down a bit. Move it closer and down. Height, Lan. Height. Okay. So I want you to do a more close up. All right. So you have to go a bit here because you want to see also the length and at the same time the, okay, you can still focus, right? See that? Enlarge it, please. There you go. You can see the gloss there. You want to bring that out because that makes it look so tempting. Okay? All right. And what is your white balance?
White balance, 5,400.
5,000?
5,400.
How much?
5,500.
Okay, 556. Okay. All right. Okay, who's next?
Nikon people.
Only Nikon though, because this trigger works for Nikon. No one else?
I have one trigger that's in the car.
Nikon?
Canon.
Canon. Oh, too much. Oh, you only one.
Must get a gift.
Okay, that's too bad though. But if you want, we can also, okay, we'll transfer it here so you can see. All right? But this is the more ideal shape of the modifier. The rectangular softbox. Okay. Alan, where are you? Okay. Can we transfer this one here? Okay. By the way, I noticed that if you're photographing this space tree, you're aiming it too high. Take note, it also has a bit of height. So don't go too high, okay?
I want to show you my photo.
Okay, hold on. Huh?
Jay, can I
Yes.
just ask?
Yes, please.
No, behind you.
Sure. All right. I'll transfer this.
The trigger.
No, that trigger is only for Nikon, unfortunately. Sorry. Okay. All right. Who's the one using Nikon? All right. You can use this. All right. All right. So this time, okay, try this one. Alan? But this one, it has to be like that, see? So there's a disadvantage of this shape. It has to be square. That will look more beautiful for shiny objects there. Okay?
This all dark or what?
Sorry? Yes.
Dark?
Yes. Just a bit of more of exposure there.
This 1000 ISO.
Then you have to use your slower shutter speed,
Lower shape.
like 60.
60.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right.
And then I put
Yes. A bit lower. So that's, you can see the effect, no? The square softbox will appear a lot better with the shiny surface. But that doesn't mean that it's not possible. Anyone here still using Nikon? No one? Me. You don't have your camera? Okay. Okay, it's too bad. All right. All right. Oh, who's Nikon? This one. Try this one with the flash. You're lucky. You're the only one. You can.
He's a lucky man.
Yeah.
The power of Nikon.
Yeah. So you can try using the speed light there.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I feel bad, yeah. Every Nikon people will say, Canon. Like, why we put here TTL?
Through the lens, so that when you adjust the aperture, the camera will adjust it for you automatically. The power.
Okay.
Yeah. Not
Well,
earlier.
I
It.
have the same, but usually I put manual.
Yeah, that means if the light is too bright or if it's overexposed, you have to reduce the power yourself. But TTL, that's it. Yeah,
If I put the shutter over more than 250.
it'll be, there's a banding, black band. Yeah, so
No,
yeah.
but usually I.
If you go to the high-speed sync,
Yes.
oh, that's a different matter.
Okay, and here I must put TTL or. Put
Always go
manually?
for the TTL, and if you, for example, you're in TTL and you want to reduce the power, just adjust that.
Okay.
Decrease power, increase power.
Okay.
Okay, but normally you would go for a decrease, so that when you adjust the aperture, the light will adjust itself also for you. Yes, go try it. Okay, so please make sure that you download the quick guide here. Okay, and that
Zip folder, yeah?
yes,
Download already.
yes, and that will automatically that automatically captures your email address. But in the future, if I have updates on the quick guides added, you can always receive them. All right? So thank you very much, and please, I hope you got something from here, and thank you very much for your time. See you in the next seminar.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.